This is a testimony about how God worked during the most challenging time of my life. During the last Saturday of July 2017, I phoned my daughter in the morning. I had a strange feeling whilst I was talking to her, one like I wasn't saying the right words. I thought nothing of it and went to work. Over the next couple of hours, this feeling grew until I couldn't get the words out of my head into my mouth. My wife and I went to the hospital where my speech continued to diminish. Just imagine you can think of words perfectly but can't get them out of your mouth. I had had a stroke. The one thing that I was most worried about, out of all the things that you could be worried about, was that in 3 weeks' time I was supposed to officiate a wedding of a student friend of mine who was an atheist marrying a Christian, and after many years of discussions whilst he was going to college in Swansea, had decided that if he was ever going to go through a full wedding ceremony, I had to do it. The next 3 weeks was spent teaching myself how to talk again, reading large passages of the Bible out loud in my hospital bed. The other patients must have thought I was a complete whack job. It's really strange having to think about every word you want to say before you say it. When you've had a stroke, speech doesn't come naturally. The most frustrating thing in the world is when you can see a word that you want to say, but it just won't come out of your mouth. It's like playing charades with yourself. It's infuriating. I started preaching again just over a month after I'd had my stroke, and my congregation were very patient with me because by this time I had worked out that quite often I had to play charades with those people listening to me to get the word that I was wanting. And it was great fun at the time because, as well as still having to think about every word which I was saying, I would forget what I was talking about if interrupted. And this was a common occurrence in my church, as I had one guy who was regularly drunk and ranting about different things that I'd said, and another guy with Tourette's. So you can imagine it was rather challenging. There were some other side effects of having the stroke, which no one really knew about. My temper would flare up, and at an instant's notice, almost getting me into a fight outside my shop with a motorist over a parking issue. I would just see red and couldn't control it. At no point in this process did I blame God. This was just something that had happened, another hurdle for me to get over. A nurse had told me that having this type of stroke was like having a mental filing cabinet filled with your vocabulary, and it was turned upside down and spilled out all over the floor. I'd have to put everything back into the cabinet, word by word. Although this process, all through this process, there were positive people around, like a lady who came to church with us, Lorraine, who was adamant that I would get back to normal, and I would dearly like to thank her, and I thank her constantly for her positivity. Above all, I thank God for my healing, and above all, I thank God for my healing. I'm now 2 years down the road, still improving and nearly back to normal. God, as always, has done the unexpected. When the nurse said about the filing cabinet, I see mine as having 3 drawers. I've crammed all my words into the top drawer, and the rest is reserved for biblical knowledge. I'm not perfect, and there are some words that I just can't think of anymore. But my biblical knowledge has gone from strength to strength. Since my stroke, I have a ravenous appetite for biblical history, and have learned more in the last 2 years about the Bible and biblical times and history than I did in my previous 40 or 50. Throughout it all, I was never afraid, but I had a calm sense of God's peace about me. I couldn't hear God in the same manner as I once had. I had to listen and attune my ears and my soul and my spirit to hear him from God in a different manner. It used to be that I could hear God in dreams and talking almost audibly to me, but no more. I just had to learn that God speaks in many different ways. And if something happens to you that stops you hearing, maybe you need to attune your other senses. He is still there and he is still talking. It's just your ability to listen has been impaired. Like it says in Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you, God, are with me. I'm living proof that out of adversity, God can fashion something good and better than before. I'm much calmer now than I ever was, apart from with my small son, and I'm still working on that. I'm a much more rounded dad, husband, person. It's all thanks to God, who took a situation which could have been devastating and turned it into one for his benefit, because I can teach others the knowledge that I am gaining almost daily, and teaching has become a big part of my ministry. And in case you were wondering, yes, I officiated the wedding 3 weeks after having a stroke. I had to write everything down, but I did it. I was told afterwards that no one would have known that I'd had a stroke. God is good. Now I've read that, as you probably could tell, just to keep it concise and stop me waffling. But it's amazing how much of a difference a stroke can make to you. Sometimes I stutter, sometimes I stammer, sometimes I lose my words. But it's all good. I can still function. None of my bodily parts were affected, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's something that I feel blessed day by day about the way that God helped me. He didn't heal me instantly. He healed me over time. And there were some people that were saying I would never get my functionality of speech back. There were some people that were saying I'd only get some functionality back. But like with Lorraine, Lorraine was adamant that I'd be able to preach and speak as I once did, and I'm living proof that God works miracles. Now you could say that that it had nothing to do with God. It was just my determination and my circumstance. But I choose to believe that it was God having a hand in it, because if God hadn't had a hand in it, my understanding of biblical history and my knowledge and thirst for biblical history wouldn't have ever started. And now I'm able to share that biblical history and the knowledge that I'm learning with others. And yes, it's for want of a better expression, it's pinched knowledge, it's stolen knowledge, but all knowledge is pinched or stolen unless you get a revelation from God about something. So I'm about to start on a series of little snippets of information about the Bible, and I hope you'll pop in and have a look at them. My name's Steve Speakman. I'm a stroke survivor, and I'm a Christian and a pastor, and I hope you feel blessed in everything that you do. God bless.